Chapter 195. Wealth, Death, Successor. That by this kind of thousandfold inventions, also the trade with foreign nations was hugely expanded, hardly needs to be mentioned. But that thereby naturally the city of Hanoch became exceedingly rich in earthly goods, will be comprehensible to everyone. But the consequences of this great wealth are not so easy to identify and explain from the outset. But what are the consequences of wealth in general? Let's see. The natural consequences of wealth are desire to dominate, callousness towards the poor and needy, an awakening of a powerful drive for increasing sensual gratification of the flesh, which are called lust, as well as usury, avarice, envy, hatred, anger, forgetting God, gorging, gluttony, idolatry, thievery, robbery, and murder. These are the very natural consequences of wealth. Did these also emerge in Hanoch? For as long King Karl lived and ruled, these vices were still veiled. But when, after 43 years of government, King Karl died a violent death in a machine accident, and his son Jakob took over the government, soon everything began to go haywire. Just as much his father was full of active inventiveness, as much Jakob was a paragon of a politician. But what are the things a fine politician can use for his own purpose? He, namely Jakob, for this sake tolerated anything, but under certain laws. Thus, one was allowed to steal, but only up to a certain value. But one had to steal smartly, because if a thief was caught, the victim had the right to punish the thief as he pleases. This law was quite suitable to bring about within a short time the most crafty thieves, but at the same time kept the inhabitants of the cities as well as the countryside on constant alert. But the death penalty was nevertheless set if a thief laid his hands on the wealth of the priests, the state officials, and also the treasures of the king. Under such circumstances, also highway robbery was permitted by law. But the party being robbed had its own right of defence. But the robber was obliged to always deliver 1/3 of the booty to the public treasury. Failing to do so would have forfeited him the right to rob forever. For the robber was legally authorized by the king himself, and had, by virtue of this proclamation, a certain status of nobility, similar to the robber barons during the early times after my birth. However, thieves were not declared, and therefore everyone had the right to steal. Then the king also introduced a law by virtue of which all girls from the middle class were free. Every man had thus the right to sleep with a daughter from the middle class wherever he wanted. But the father had the right to buy himself an aristocracy title for a year. Then his daughter was protected, but only for 1 year. Thereupon, however, she was free again, and a new nobility title had to be bought, if the father wanted his daughters to be protected henceforth. This monopoly earned the king enormous sums. Whoever had bought this minor aristocracy title for 10 consecutive years could apply for a senior title in the 11th year. But this also costed 10 times that of the minor. Who wanted to talk to the king had to be brief, for only 10 words were permitted for free. 1 word more resulted in paying beforehand £1 of gold for every word. But the following will show how Jappel understood to seize wealth.